My name is Elizabeth Manso, and I would like to welcome our guests to our first ever Empowering Seniors Now webinar. And we are excited to share some great information with you today. We will have 3 10 to 15-minute sessions for you today. We please ask that if you have any questions, that you would please post them in the chat, and they will either be answered at the end of each session or possibly answered during the session. At the end of the last presentation, we will give away a prize to one of our guests. So please stay with us to the end if you are able to be eligible to win the prize. At this time, I will turn it over to Brittany, who will introduce our first speaker.
My name is Brittany Reckert, and I'm happy to introduce to you today our first speaker, Doreen Seamon. Doreen Seamon is the owner of Seamon Law Offices PLLC, which serves both West Virginia and Pennsylvania. In her time as a practicing attorney, she has guided hundreds of families through critical estate planning decisions at varying stages of life. She is highly experienced in obtaining long-term care Medicaid benefits and veteran benefits for those in need, as well as settling estates. Doreen partners with accountants, financial advisors, insurance agents, and bankers to maximize results in each of her clients' unique situations. Doreen and her team strive to help their clients achieve their goals regardless of their means. Doreen strongly believes that knowledge is power and devoted to sharing her knowledge of estate planning and elder law in her community. She is the founder of Kadai's LLC and its Answers television series, including Elder Care Answers. Doreen is also featured monthly on WAJR's Ask the Expert series, and she authors a monthly article in the Dominion's Post Senior Post magazine. In her spare time, Doreen serves on the board of a nonprofit, Pace Enterprises, whose mission is to help people with disabilities find meaningful employment. She is the proud mother of 3 adult children and 1 granddaughter. Doreen was born and raised in Pennsylvania, raised her family in West Virginia, and recently relocated to southwestern Pennsylvania to be closer to her son and his family. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Doreen Seamon.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Empowering Seniors Now. And today, Brittany touched on where you can find us, but we have a TV show and a segment, as you can see, on local stations, Channel 5 and Channel 12, and our radio show. And they upload that to all the podcast servers, and you can always find great information on all the social media and SeamonLawOffices.com. So one of the most common questions I get in regard to estate planning is people just don't know where to start. It just feels so overwhelming. And I think your best way to start is looking at, where do you want to be? What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? And then think about what your concerns are in accomplishing those. So it all starts with that, and maybe collecting an idea of what your assets and income sources are. And then we work with you to create your documents and help you to store those in a safe place, and have your important people that are part of that plan be notified as to where to find everything and what their role is in your estate plan. So in our office, you'll often hear us talk about your foundation, meaning that you need to have some basic things in order to have an estate plan. And for some of us, we might build on trusts and other different components, but it all starts with some of the basics. And today we're going to start with a power of attorney. So the big reason we have an estate planning foundation is to help you retain control. And a lot of people are afraid to do an estate plan because they feel like they're losing control. They're talking about a potential incapacity or their eventual death. And making these decisions and having things laid out the way that you want actually helps you feel like you are in control. And then it gives your loved ones the tools they need to help you to carry out your wishes, whether it's just because you're not feeling well and it's a little bit difficult to take care of your finances, or maybe there's a capacity issue. And if you take these simple steps with your estate planning foundation, you'll find that you have more peace of mind and you're better able to achieve the legacy that maybe you wanted to, whether you have a very small estate or a very large one. So this webinar, we're going to focus on the financial power of attorney, which to me, I often call it the unsung hero of your estate planning foundation. So did you know that 20% of West Virginia's population's already over the age of 65? That puts us in third place in the United States. And for those of you in Pennsylvania that have joined us today, you're right behind us at 18%. So if you think about it, 1 in 5 West Virginians is already age 65 or older. So what does this mean? Well, we need to have our affairs in order, and not all documents are equal. So we often see people maybe think they're keeping more control or privacy, and they will maybe get forms off the internet or type their own forms or go to their family attorney that does car wrecks and sues people and does criminal work. And oh yeah, they also write wills and powers of attorney. And we want you to understand the components of a good power of attorney. So a good power of attorney allows the person that you trust, your trusted person is called your agent, to do things such as qualify you for important benefits, maybe Medicaid, veterans benefits, Social Security benefits, file your taxes, protect your assets. They need to be able to adapt your plan. There are a lot of things going on right now where we're talking about changes in taxing structure and benefits. And if a plan doesn't appropriately give the person you trust the power to take advantage of all these things, then they might not be able to do what's best for you. And then gifting, we'll talk more about in a few minutes, but we actually need them to be able to gift, because gifting is a strategy that we often use to get people on benefits. Now, of course, we put strings around those gifts. We don't want them to do anything foolish, but it is an important component that needs to be in your financial power of attorney. So some of the issues we see with powers of attorney, people often will have a power of attorney they had drafted somewhere else. Maybe it's old. Maybe they just did it and they want us to look at it and tell them if it's doing what it needs to do. So we're going to talk about a few of the issues we see with powers of attorney brought to us. One would be a limit to the gifts. So we don't want your power of attorney document to prohibit gifts. Gifting, as I said, is a strategy to avoid taxes, qualify you for benefits, make sure if you spend a few months in a nursing home that you don't go broke, that you have money to come home to. So we don't want the gifts to be prohibited, and we also don't want to limit them. And some people will limit them to something called the annual gift tax exclusion, which is currently $15,000 per year. And they think they're being really smart, but they're actually shooting themselves in the foot, and we're going to be limited on what we can do to qualify them for benefits as quickly as possible. The other one is self-dealing. Think about the person that if you fell and bumped your head tomorrow, who would you trust to take care of your affairs? For many of us, it's a family member, and that family member might also be a beneficiary or heir of our estate. So for example, if my husband or my child are my agent helping me to take care of my assets, if I fall and bump my head, they are also heirs of my estate. So that means anything they do to protect my money means they might also benefit from it if I would die and have more money. So we have to acknowledge that it might benefit them. Now, we can't let them rob us blind or take advantage of us. So we have to say it in a certain way to say, yeah, they can do what they want. And yeah, I'm smart enough to understand if they protect my money and I die with more money, that they'll inherit more money. Sometimes I have clients that just want to name one person and they refuse to assign somebody as a successor, as a backup. Even if your agent is younger than you, you don't know what might happen. They might not want to serve anymore or be unable to serve due to their health or job or family obligations. So we really encourage people to name 1 or 2 successor agents, just in case. Sometimes the power of attorney doesn't allow us to change circumstances. So to address those. So sometimes laws change, families change, people's health changes, rules for benefits change. We need to let your agent take advantage of whatever planning opportunities are available to him or her that we possibly can. If we do that, then we're going to get you the best advantage. So we spend a lot of time in our office training on how to protect estates from assets, the high cost of nursing home care, to get Social Security, disability, to qualify for veteran benefits. Those rules change from time to time. And so your power of attorney document needs to let us help them help you to take advantage of those changes. Sometimes trusts aren't mentioned in a power of attorney, or the types of trusts we can use are limited. So there are a lot of different trusts and they all achieve a different goal. So not permitting the use of a trust explicitly or only mentioning certain trusts by name limits what we can do for you. And so then I don't have as many tools in my toolbox when your agent comes to me and says, how can I keep mom from going broke in the nursing home? Well, my hands might be tied somewhat. Outdated documents. If you think about it, if somebody's trying to sell your house and a third party, your agent's trying to sell your house and a third party is buying it, they want to know that this document is still valid. The title insurance company, the bank, all of them want to protect their interest in knowing that this transaction is legal and valid. So sometimes documents should just be updated because they're now outdated. So there's always a concern from the professionals that you're dealing with that a document that's stale, that's old, might not be valid anymore, or the wording and how we do things has changed. So for example, a new law passed in 2012 that addressed powers of attorney, and it really changed how we do things in our office, but a lot of clients have powers of attorney that predate that law change. A lot of people don't think about guardians. So most people know that when they die, they should have a guardian named for their minor children. But what if that person was in a car accident and they didn't die and they lost capacity for a period of time and they were unable to take care of those children for a period of time? So if you have a power of attorney and you have minor children, make sure that it addresses who would be the guardian for those children until you get better. And if you're a grandparent, make sure your kids have that in their power of attorney documents. Otherwise, the state might appoint a guardian for them or send them to foster care for a period of time, and nobody wants that. Now, if you don't have a power of attorney or your document is poorly drafted, what usually happens is we have to go to court and we have to tell the judge that if you'd known what you know now, or what we all know now, you would have done it differently. Now, that takes time. We usually see at least a month or two, even when things go smoothly. It costs money to go through that process. And often people are nervous about it and they hire somebody like our office to help them. We have less planning opportunities because we didn't plan in advance or as we saw things changing. And we have the risk that the judge won't let us do what we need to do to protect your assets for your benefit. And they might not even appoint the person that you wanted to be appointed because the judge doesn't know that out of your two sisters, you trust one with your life, but the other one, not so much. He or she's only going to know what was presented to them during the hearing time. So that's a little bit about powers of attorney. Our office offers a free consultation to discuss these types of estate planning matters with people who haven't worked with us before, and we can review your power of attorney to see if it's accomplishing your goals. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you back here on Empowering Seniors Now next month. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Doreen? If you do have a question, you can send it through your chat.
Thank you, Doreen. We will now move on to our next speaker, Booker T. Walton III. Booker is the owner of Mountaineer Technology Consultants, LLC. Having been a computer enthusiast since the age of 6, he's worked in the technology field for over 20 years. While the business has grown, Booker has made sure that MTC is very community-centric, working with a variety of nonprofit partners and community resources. If you were to ask him, though, he began the seeds of Mountaineer Tech working with senior citizens, giving them technical help and advice. He has built a strong network of senior citizens that he makes sure that no matter how busy the business is, that they get the important technical help that they need at an affordable price. His goal is to arm people with data to make informed decisions with their computers and technical information. Booker spends his spare time with his 2 children, Claire, age 12, and Tristan, who is 5. He resides in Morgantown and has been a lifelong Morgantown resident committed to the improvement of the greater Morgantown community. His partnerships with nonprofits, as well as being on the board of directors of Girls on the Run, demonstrates his belief in community growth. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Booker Walton.
Hey, thanks, Liz. I appreciate that very much. And good morning to everybody. I just want to say before I even start, I want to thank the 3 of you for being on. You know, when you're putting this on and you're getting things together to do these things, you want to get it off the ground. So you guys are helping us start something that we hopefully will turn into something that is bigger and better, and we'll get more and more people on. So I appreciate that very much. But I am Booker Walton, and I'm the owner of Mountaineer Technology Consultants here in Morgantown. We're located up on Scott Avenue. If you know where the old Ramada used to be, we're right down the road from that. Or if you know where Koval's is, we're right down the road from that. We like to empower our users through technology. So there's that word again. But today I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. And you can see the name of it there, email and website scams. There are so many times that I get phone calls from people where they're asking me if something that they've received is a scam, or if they thought it was legit, or Microsoft called and said, hey, our computer is compromised, we need to get on there. And a lot of times people call me too late. So I just want to talk about how to stop being a victim and how to recognize some of these scam threats. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and play this video. We're going to see if it plays. I'm going to hit play right now.
Wanted, trusting senior, significant assets, uses the internet, vulnerable to online frauds and scams. Computers bring education, companionship, banking, and shopping into your home. Unfortunately, they can also bring scam artists and fraudsters into your life. Seniors are the fastest growing group of online purchasers, and the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre reports that approximately 400 seniors a month fall victim to online fraud, scams that can rob you of your money, your trust, and your independence. There are a lot of good reasons to be online, but it's very important to learn what to avoid. Together, we can learn so we recognize it, report it, and stop it.
Essentially, an online phishing scam involves an email that is received in your inbox or a link to a web page. And within that email or web page, it essentially asks you to update your information or to provide personal information that maybe the recipient does not have. Now, it is made to look legitimate and to imitate a current business, such as a bank or an agency such as Revenue Canada agency. And again, it asks you to update their information. Now, if you do update that information, it is captured by the fraudster, and then it can be used in an additional fraud.
There was an email from the bank saying that my account had been blocked for some suspicious activity that was going on, but asking me to provide my bank account number along with my password so they can verify the transaction that recently had taken place. Everything looked authentic. It looked like it was coming from the bank. Went into the link, provided them with my bank account information, plus my password. And shortly after that, my account was completely emptied. There was no money left. Nothing like that should ever happen to anyone.
A person needs to remember that a bank already has your personal information. If they need to update or verify anything, they will certainly not be doing it over the internet. Anyone can be targeted by this type of scam. The fraudsters send it out en masse in hopes of getting as many victims as possible. Take your time and don't be pressured into doing something that you're unsure about.
So I'm going to stop it there and I want to go ahead and continue forth. So they were talking about phishing emails, and I just want to talk a little bit about that. Phishing is basically, and it's not where we're casting the line, but it's a fraudulent attempt to get sensitive data or information from you. And they disguise the interaction, like she was saying, as something trustworthy. And look at this stat right below it. In 2020, 97% of consumers still can't identify a phishing email. And I'm here to tell you that's true. I normally, seriously, I normally get 4 to 5 calls a week just about something that they're not sure is legit. Unfortunately, sometimes they've already clicked on it. And you can see the next one, 3 billion phishing emails or messages and emails are sent a day. And then the last one, $650 million per year are cyber crimes against older adults. I'm going to give you an example, and I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm just trying to get you to think about this. I had somebody call me who had an email come in that said there was something wrong with their computer. They got on the phone with these people, let them on their computer, gave them their bank debit card, and $35,000 later, on Monday, they called me. $35,000 later before they figured out that something was wrong. I can't get that money back. And it was all because they got something that looked legitimate. And that's not the only story I have about that. So let's go ahead and move forward. This is an example of one right here. So if you look at this, from the top, it says Global Pay, VT at Global. It's very generic. But it says here, dear customer, regret to inform that your account has been restricted. To continue using our services, please download the file attached. Well, first of all, you would not download an HTML, and that might be hard to recognize, but that's a web page. So that's going to take you somewhere, and likely what's going to happen is it's going to ask you to update your email and password. Guess what happens when you update your email and password? Now they have the ability to monitor all of your emails. In fact, we had a situation here in the office where somebody had come in and they had given their email and password, and people were sending out things to their friends because they can get in and see everybody who they've sent to, asking them to buy gift cards and send them off to different places. And their friends got mad at them because they actually did it and were wanting to come back after them, when really the only fault they had was as they clicked on this particular message, and now these people were acting like they were them. These things really do happen. Let's take a look at another one. So this one looks like it's from hotels.com, right? But if we look at the email, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, the email says hotelscom@roktpowered.com. That's not a real thing. Okay, the rest of it looks legit. I mean, that's the hotels.com logo. You've got 50% off. It's asking you to click through and book with your email and such. But there are certain signs of things that just won't look right. And that right there is a key sign that something is not right. It should have hotels.com at the end, not at the beginning. Let's look at one more. This one here says Best Buy. But does that say at bestbuy.com? No, it does not. It says at fashionlab.com.us in the email address. And then look, it has the logo and stuff, but if you were to look in the body of the message, look at the English. Please fill this form. There's spacing messed up, and send it back if you replied to this message. If you do not receive your reply within a week, we will pay your money back less 17. This is obviously a phishing email. But what happens a lot of times is people see that Best Buy tag and they think it's legitimate, even if they didn't buy anything, and they want to take action. I guess what I'm here to tell you today is it is better to slow down and think, did I do this, before I click and react? We live in a society nowadays where we want to click and react on things quickly instead of thinking about what the possibility might be that I actually did this or didn't do it, or I might be getting scammed. So let's talk about this. This is the 800 number pop-up. A lot of times you'll be on a website and you'll see something that comes up and says something's wrong. I want to play on this.
Hi folks, Glenn from Rocket Internet Security here. I want to talk to you today about the 800 number pop-up, which is on one of my customer screens right here, as you can see. And she almost called it, but thankfully she called me instead, so I can tell her and you about this. This is a scam. This is just a pop-up on your screen, random pop-up. You got redirected to some website you didn't want to be on, and this pop-up keeps popping up. No matter how many times you click OK or leave this page or check the box to create the page from creating additional dialogues, it still keeps popping up on your page. And it's even making this neat little noise. Well, no worries. Here is how we get this off your screen. We're going to right click down here on the task manager or on the taskbar and click start task manager, or you can use Control Alt Delete to get here. You'll notice under applications, we have these two instances of Google Chrome running, one of them being Chrome, the other one being the pop-up. You can see the bunch of processes running here too, but we're just going to select these two and end task. There's the first one, and here's the second one. Now Windows says, are you sure you want to end the program? Yes, let's end the program. And that gets rid of the pop-up. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to reopen Google Chrome. And you'll notice that when we reopen in the top right, it wants us to restore those pages. This is Chrome just saying, hey, you crashed us down. Do you want us to put your pages back up? If you say yes, you'll have the pop-up back on your screen. So just hit the little X and you'll be back to your regular home page.
So I'm going to stop that right there. Pop-up virus pages, it is almost never a real virus. But what happens is it stays on your page, just like the gentleman was talking about, and people get frustrated. They end up calling the number, and the number tells them there's something wrong with their computer, tells them how to get it off, and then says, we can come on your computer and get these things fixed. And then all of a sudden you've given a credit card or you've given a debit card and you're out money. It happens way too often. They wouldn't do it if they weren't successful. So here's my thing, right? Never call the number. Always call somebody you know. And as he said before there, Control Alt Delete is your friend. Control Alt Delete can get you out of a lot of different situations if you have a Windows computer. These things don't happen as frequently on Macs, but they can happen. So it's one of those things that you have to be aware that just because it pops up on the screen doesn't mean there's something always is wrong. And if you just can't get it off the screen at all, restart the system, power it down. You don't have to hit the start button, or you don't have to hit, the Apple button and then shut down on a Mac. You can always hold the power button for 5 seconds and it will shut down your system. Those things will be off your screen and you can start over when the computer comes back up. But you can shut down, you can call somebody, you can restart. Just don't reach out to those numbers. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Turn the page. So here's my closing thoughts, right? This is the one I tell people all the time. Trust your gut. If you weren't expecting an email from somebody telling you to open something up, we probably shouldn't open it up. If you didn't buy anything from Best Buy, and Best Buy has an email, or not Best Buy, but somebody acting as Best Buy has an email in front of you saying, hey, you purchased this, but we don't know how to get it to you. Give us your information. We shouldn't click on that. We should question those things. Our intuition saves us a lot of problems. Also, never click or pick up the phone and call. Don't click on that link. Don't pick up the phone and call these people. They are bad actors. I can tell you this with great certainty. Microsoft does not care that you broke your computer. They don't care because they know you're going to go get a new one and they're going to make money off of that. They're not going to call you. That's the biggest scam there is the Microsoft scam, Microsoft saying that you have a problem. That is not true. Legitimate services will never ask you for your information. They already have it. Your bank has your information. Okay, they would never ask you for your information in email. The most that you might get is where you need to click on a link to reset your password, but you would have had to request that. Same thing with almost everything else, whether it be the Amazons of the world, your shopping stores, some of the apps we use. They're not just going to ask out of the blue for your information. If that happens, red flag. And lastly, the most important one, and this is what I tell all my clients, if you're confused or not sure, call someone they trust. It can be me, it can be a family member, but do not call the people that are confusing you. They're there to confuse you and to close the deal and try and take your money. That's not worth it. Call somebody you trust to just double check that that's a situation that either A, you shouldn't be involved in, you should be getting away from, or B, maybe it is. But let me tell you something, it's probably 1 out of 100 times that it's actually something legitimate. You should always err on the side that it's fake. And that leads me to my last thought. It's better to err in caution than it is to act in anxiousness. And I was talking about that before, right? Don't just click on things for the sake of clicking on things. I know in our society, we're very immediate to information. We need to question things, even more so today in such a world of disinformation. This is what Empowering Seniors Now is all about, to get you to think and to take actions based off of reasonable thought, not just because we need to click on it. So with that, I appreciate it. And I'll let if there's any questions, feel free. And if there isn't any questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. And now I'm excited. I get to introduce a good friend of mine, somebody that has been great to me and my family, and that is Michelle Lewis. Michelle owns Integrative Counseling Solutions here in Morgantown, West Virginia. Give me 1 second there. I apologize. All right. Sorry, Michelle. My fault. They're located on 713 Greenbag Road in Morgantown, West Virginia. As a certified grief and trauma counselor, Michelle helps individuals and families identify, address, and move forward from adverse events in their lives through individualized counseling sessions. And for nearly 2 decades, she has been helping people regain balance in their lives through individualized counseling sessions and holistic therapy. She works closely with individuals suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and other trauma reactions due to combat, sexual assault, accidents, and other life-changing experiences. Michelle's helped them to reestablish their independence and move forward with their personal goals. Michelle works with people to understand their intense emotions and move through their pain, providing insight and resources customized to the individual to embrace their feelings, finding peace and balance for their future. I'm not only her friend, I'm also her client. But without further ado, I'm proud to introduce to you Michelle Lewis.
Hello, thank you, Booker. I appreciate that. So I wanted to take the opportunity today to talk to you guys just a little bit about grief and really kind of how to navigate through grief when something happens. I think grief can be one of those things that has so many different layers that it confuses people, it overwhelms people. And when we start to talk a little bit about some of the common grief reactions that occur, it makes sense that it confuses people and that it overwhelms people. So I wanted to start off though, and when we talk about, I don't know if I can make my screen move. When we talk about different causes of grief, obviously when we first talk about grief, we think about death. People grieve after someone that they care about, someone that they love, someone in their life dies. But death isn't the only thing that can cause grief reactions. When you think about really anytime we have to unattach from something, we're unattaching from a time in our life, we're unattaching from a role that we've played, from a specific place, from an idea, from a way we had to see ourselves. So what retirement can bring grief, a loss of independence, who we used to be when we could do these things and now we can't do these things. Losing a community, whether that's because you've moved, because you've sold your house and had to go somewhere else, but some type of loss of community. Isolation, this last year especially, there's been a lot of people that have struggled with really being isolated and grieving, although the friends necessarily haven't died. They're grieving friends, grieving those places you would go with friends. And then physical illness, physical limitations, long-term chronic pain. These are just an example of some things and common things that bring up grief. What I would tell you to kind of keep in mind is really that idea that anytime we have to, again, unattach from something that has been important to us, that has helped define us or the people in our life, it's really common to see some type of grief reaction. And so I wanted to give you guys just kind of a demonstration first about when we're talking about grief, what happens? What does that look like? And so if you bear with me for 2 seconds while I shift this around. I'm going to screen down just a bit so you can see what I'm looking at. So when you think about then what happens in grief? And so a demonstration goes as this. This is my life. And it may look a little messy to you, but I have everything in my life exactly the way I need it. I've worked really hard to get each of these pieces where I want them, how I want them. But then one day, something happened and something changed. And this is what happened to my life. And I sit here and I look around at all of these pieces of my life, and life feels so different and so empty. And I'm so overwhelmed as there's just pieces everywhere. But I know that at some point I have to start looking at these pieces I have to start picking up a piece at a time and deciding if it belongs in my life still. And if so, where? There's sometimes, though, things like trust or even the idea of going out. That's just too overwhelming, and I'll deal with that later. Other things, though, I find space for them, and I can figure out how they go back in my life quickly. And other people come around and they tell me, just pick up those pieces, throw them back, put them back in that box, figure it out. Other people come around and they want to pick up pieces for me, tell me where they go. How dare they? They don't know where these belong. They don't even know if they belong anymore. So when people come around and ask me, what can they do? How can they help? The truth is, what I really need is I just need someone to come and hold my hand. Hold my hand and support me as I start to pick through and go through the pieces of my life. And so when you think about grief, when you think about what that experience of grieving and the actual work of grief is, the work of grief is having to go through and pick up these dominoes. You know, think about in your own lives how heavy some of these dominoes are. You know, there's a lot of weight to try to pick these up and figure out if they belong back in that box or how. And what I always tell people when we're kind of going through that is that, you know, the box doesn't look the same at the end. And there's a grief about that too, that you're grieving maybe the loss of, let's say, in retirement, the loss of that job and what that job has meant and what you gave in that job. And although it might be nice to retire, it also comes with a lot of changes. And life also now looks a lot different. And some of those ways that life can look a lot different can be great, but also some of the ways that life is different is harder. And so there's a grief that can come with that. And so I think what's really important to kind of, nothing else, is when you take away from the dominoes, is that grief really is a process, regardless of what you're grieving, of picking up a domino each time, one domino at a time, and that people can't pick the dominoes up for you. And I think the other thing is that not every single thing on this list on the screen or other times in life, it doesn't necessarily dump the entire box. Some things dump your entire box of dominoes. Other things drop half the box, but there's still a grief reaction in that, because anytime the configuration of that box changes, there's some amount of loss that has occurred, and we grieve that. And so what does then grief look like? What do people experience when they're grieving? And although grief experiences can be a whole array, I wanted to kind of focus on a couple specifics. What's important to know is that grief affects us physically, behaviorally, intellectually, emotionally, socially. It really affects every single part of our life in some way. And I'm not going to go through and read all these things on the screen to you, but a couple I wanted to really point out. As far as some of the physical and behavioral, people when they're grieving can become much more accident prone. There was a study done a long time ago that showed that, especially after a death, but that when grieving, that 80% of people will experience some type of serious accident or illness within 18 months of death. And so when you think about why that happens, a lot of times people's short-term memory isn't as good, our focus isn't as good, we are sleeping as well, and therefore it makes sense that people become more accident prone or they're getting sick more often. And so what I would tell you is it becomes important to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Self-care when you're grieving is incredibly important. And a lot of times it's the thing that people let go of the first. A couple other things as far as physical and behavioral, high blood pressure. Just the increased stress alone can increase people's blood pressure. You become less resistant to illness, so more likely to get sick. And just not having the energy. And as well as kind of that muscle tightness and weakness, people their bodies hurt. And a lot of times it's hard to make sense of, well, wait, I'm grieving, but my body hurts. And we know there's a connection between our emotions and our bodies. But sometimes in those moments of actually actively grieving, we forget that actually it's maybe our grief that's making our body hurt so much also. And so actually, I mentioned difficulty concentrating, but also feeling forgetful, short-term memory loss, not being able to remember things as well. And a lot of people that will come in and be like, I think I'm going crazy. And it's not that people are going crazy, but there's so much energy, emotional energy being taken up with the grief that it's a little bit harder to stay focused present day with what's going on around you. And therefore leads to a lack of attention to detail, whether that's at how that conditionally affects people at work, how that affects you in your life, and how that also makes people more likely to become accident prone, when you're just not focusing as well. But then the emotional social part, right? When it's more likely, people are more likely to feel angry at times, to experience guilt. We're kind of notorious for the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. If only I would have done this, I should have done this, I could have done that. And that just goes with everything in life. And so which can lead to a lot more guilt. Loss of self-esteem. When you think about where do you get your self-esteem from? For a lot of us, it's, people really kind of increase their self-esteem by the roles they play in life. What happens if that role changes? That role of parent, or that role of manager, or all the different roles we play. How do you redefine who you are when your roles change? And when routine becomes different, become either more resistant to change our routine, or that our routines kind of are all over the place. And so it becomes really important to know that grief has an effect on all areas of life. The one that's not listed on here that I think is also important to just mention is spirituality. How grief affects kind of just our spirituality. For some people, it really increases your spirituality. It makes people more kind of aligned with their spiritual beliefs. And for others, it can take away. It can decrease spiritual beliefs. And so then what do you do? How do you survive this grief experience? When you think about someone that when you feel like you're going crazy, it's hard to concentrate. Everyone's telling you this either shouldn't bother you or you should be over it by now. They're trying to pick your pieces up for you. What do you do? And so the first thing I would say, and probably the hardest for a lot of people to do, is feel your feelings. We do a lot of things in life to push away our feelings, to not feel our feelings. And yet how important feeling our feelings is. Taking the time doesn't mean you have to jump into the deep end of the pool with them all the time. But when you're feeling sad, if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling regret, whatever it is in that moment, take a moment and acknowledge that it's there. And then move forward. But taking those moments to feel whatever's going on. And then kind of with that is talking about your feelings. Who are the people in your life that will support you talking about your feelings? Knowing who they are, and when you want to, being able to talk about your feelings. So often we hold everything inside. And so having someone that you feel comfortable going to talk about whenever you need to. Some of the things just in form of routine, right? When we are grieving, when you're feeling overwhelmed with emotion, it's a lot harder to remember to eat for some people. Other people eat all the time. And so being able to eat balanced, regular meals, keeping yourself healthy. Taking the time also to relax. For some people, when they're grieving, it becomes this go, 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 making sure you just keep moving forward no matter what. Other times people are almost kind of become very lethargic. So finding activities you enjoy, or finding new activities that you enjoy, because it's important about doing those things that take care of yourself. And sleep becomes an important part too. Making sure that you're getting sleep, getting as good a sleep as possible. And so whether that's developing a routine for sleep, the more stressed out we are, we tend to have at least more vivid dreams or more nightmares. And therefore sleep becomes even harder. And I would say allowing for private time. Going through these dominoes is hard work. And so although isolation can cause grief, it's taking time to also notice how you're feeling, picking up those dominoes. What are you missing? What are you doing? And then having a willingness sometimes to just do things differently. When you're isolated, especially, sometimes it's not that there's not the ability to find new ways to connect with people, but you have to do it in a different way. You have to be willing to try something new. And for most of us, trying something new can be really difficult. And so taking care of yourself, because all of those symptoms that we were talking about that go along with grief can overwhelm you. And if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't feel your feelings and you don't find people that can support you, whether that is friends, whether that are professionals, or whether that is other people that get it and understand what you're going through because they've been through it too, finding those people to talk to are really important. And the last thing I would leave you with to think about is being kind to yourself. Don't judge yourself for what you experience. Now, so often I find people will say, I shouldn't be feeling this way. It's been 6 months. Why am I still struggling with this? The more you judge yourself for what you're experiencing, the longer it goes on. And that's why I think the other part of feel your feelings is important. Don't judge the feelings, let them be. Don't judge yourself. Be compassionate with yourself for whatever you're experiencing, and reach out to others, the people in your life when you need to. And that is what I have for you.
I'll go ahead and unmute myself real quick. Do we have any questions? And it looks like there is a message down here. So Colleen actually said, and Colleen, thanks for writing in. She was talking about the what I was talking about or whatever. Is there any questions for Michelle? That was a fantastic presentation. I always appreciate listening to her. A quiet but focused group. Absolutely. I'll let Brittany go ahead and take over. Brittany, you take it from here.
Thank you, Booker. We'd like to thank everyone for attending. Our next seminar will be on the 19th of May, and our guest speaker will be Scott Werdebaugh. He's the owner of Integrative Financial Planning here in Morgantown. But before we sign off today, we want to do our giveaway. Michelle, what do we have to give away today?
We have a $25 gift certificate to the Cupcakery.
We'd like to congratulate Kathy today. If we can reach out to you after the seminar, we will make sure you get your prize. Thank you so much for everyone who attended today for our first ever Empowering Seniors Now webinar. We look forward to doing it again and hope you can join us.
Excellent, guys. Great job. Give me 1 second here. That. Let's do this. And lastly, do that. Kathy, are you there? If you're there, Kathy, like send something in the chat. If you can't send something in chat, that's okay. We'll reach out to you by email. We might just reach out to her by email and we'll make sure. Oh, there we go. Brittany has already said she can reach out to Kathy. Kathy, thank you very much. We'll be reaching out. Hey, y'all. That's a wrap. Everybody happy? Happy. Doreen, where are you at?
I'm here. I'm here.
How was it? What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was nice. I thought it was